Hey, what's up guys, Just Booster here and welcome back to another One Piece video. Today I have another one for my Luchi enthusiasts, or fellow Luchi enthusiasts I should say, out there. Which is going to be taking a look at all the possible Luchi tech cards you can play in the OP09 format. So the current format, which I think is very, very interesting. I really think the tech cards in your deck are basically, oftentimes, aside from like gameplay of course, they are gonna decide how you do during a tournament, and they are really what makes One Piece deck building very interesting as well. Basically, the tech cards you're playing them because you're expecting certain matchups, right? And this is the reason why you play certain tech cards. Like if you're expecting to run into a lot of Dofi, for example, and you're playing Luchi, you're probably gonna be wanting to run something like Soap Sheep or 5-cost Kaku. But if you're like, okay, I'm gonna be playing a tournament and not gonna be running into any Dofi most likely, but instead Black Yellow Luffy is very popular, then you will probably be running like Kaido or the Nightmare Luffy. And again, like if you're expecting to run into something like a lot of Purple Luffy, maybe you're playing Kuzan. It's just a very interesting aspect to deck building, and I really want you to understand like why you're running these tech cards and in what scenarios you would want to run these tech cards, which is like when you're expecting certain matchups, right? As you can see, I have something called Luchi Core slot over here, which is like 41 cards, and in my opinion, these are basically the cards you need to be running when you're playing Luchi in this format. You can't really deviate from these cards. You have to run all of them at least at the amount that I have them in the deck right here. Possibly, I guess, the Khalifa is the only solution, but I'll get into that in a little bit. I guess Brook, you could also run like 3 possibly, but I really, really like 4. But yeah, this is 41 cards, so basically if you're building Luchi in this format, you're gonna be having 10 slots for your tech cards, and this is just like the bare minimum skeleton. So Luchi is actually a deck where you have quite a bit of room to fit these tech cards. There's definitely a lot of decks out there which do not have like 10 spots for these cards, but yeah, just running over the core real quickly, you're gonna be wanting to play 2 Spandine, 4 Brook, 3 Tsuru, and 4 Khalifa. But I do have to know that in total you will want to be running 10 2Ks most likely. These are just 7, so at least 3 of the tech card spots they're gonna have to be filled with the 2K slots, in my opinion. Then triple Spandam, I think 4 is not necessarily, but it is very good if you expect to run into a lot of Dofi, because it helps you set up your trash really quickly. Then 1 Sabo. You could argue this is a tech card actually. You could possibly get away with running 0. Like if for example you don't expect to play any like black, yellow or other black decks, then you might get away with not running this, even though it's also good into Shanks. But this is, I guess, technically a tech card, maybe. Then 4 Rebecca, 4 Luchi, 4 Gecko Moria, 2 Jack, and possibly you will want to run more of this depending on the format again. At least 1 Helmeppo, and then just the 4 Ice Age and the 4 Tempest Kick. This is the bare minimum of all these cards you want to be running. And then let's just hop into the tech cards I have, because I do want to talk about those a lot more actually. So yeah, as you can see, basically I have stalled out a bunch of tech cards here. Should be like 18 I think. And you can run all of them in varying numbers, and I think all of them have some kind of merit, although a few of these have a lot more merit than the others, and I will mention which ones I think are good and which ones I think are not good. So up first we have Laboon and Kuzan. They both actually fit kind of a similar role in that they are characters you can play out to reduce your opponent's cards. They both get -4 as well. The only difference is like in Kuzan, when you play it you get to draw a card, and the effect is when attacking, where Laboon has counter value and you rest it to use the ability. Basically you lose out on an attack and the drawn cards, but you can use it when you play it right away, which is also a strength, and it has the counter value. And I think both these cards, they're really similar. They are pretty much only good right now against Purple Luffy, and then I guess they also have like a place against something like Bonnie and Shanks, even though Kuzan is considerably less strong against Shanks, because you will find that oftentimes they have a really easy time removing Kuzan from the field, so you don't really get the value from it. Where Laboon I guess you could say is a little bit better because it synergizes really well with Jack and potentially the Nightmare Luffy, where if you already have Jack and Nightmare Luffy on the field, you can just play the Laboon, give something -4, and then use the Jack effect or attack with Nightmare Luffy and get rid of like 6, 7, or 8 cost even. If you also count leader effect, right? I do, however, at this point, not really think these cards are worth it, mostly because, like, again, Shanks is one of the biggest go tall decks, and they have a very easy time removing both of these bodies with something like Ben Beckman, for example, or Rayleigh, which makes them not that good. And in a lot of the other matchups, the big reduction isn't really necessary, I think. There is like one more reduction card in the entire list, basically, or 2, I suppose, which I think are a little bit better because they are on play. Right, so I have to mention that, of course, these 2 are better reduction-wise against something like Blackbeard. But again, they usually won't really get to do their thing, because once the 10 drop comes down, it's most likely gonna stun one of these guys, right? And then you still can't use the minus ability. Then the next one we have here is Borsalino. Like Kuzan and Laboon, they have been falling out of favor a lot, actually. But you still see them sometimes in some lists, but Borsalino has been basically out of it entirely. Very likely because this card only really excels against black decks, and then I guess against Black Yellow Luffy, it's sometimes good to grab back with the Moria. I used to play it as a one-off as well, because basically you already get the access to this card when you trash it, right? You don't have to draw it for it to be good, because you can just play it back with Moria, and then you still have the indestructible blocker on the field, which sometimes is better than Rebecca. But yeah, this card mostly only shines against the mirror match. Even against Smoker, they play Tashigi, right? And then Tashigi just easily gets rid of it because she doesn't KO. So yeah, this card not really seeing any play anymore, and I understand why. I don't really think this card is worth it at all. Opposed to the Kuzan and Laboon, which I guess if you expect Purple Luffy to be super popular, then you could play those. Then the next one is Isho. So this is another high drop. Basically, you could run like a maximum of 2 or 3 of these, I think, if you want to play them. This card is mostly very strong against Black Yellow, but it's also kind of good against Shanks, actually, because they usually save like a lot of cards in hand, and then they will mostly have more than 6 cards. You can play down the Isho, shoot 2 cards from their hands, and then it also gives them -3 reduction for the following turns, and this card's actually not easy to out for Shanks because of the 9k power, which they usually can't out. And again, against Black Yellow Luffy, it's very good, right? However, I do think this card is less good than Kaido, which is another high drop option you can play against Black Yellow Luffy. And the reason is, sometimes with Isho, like the -2 card effect, it feels really good, but actually it's kind of mediocre, because you kind of have to high roll with it, and usually if you don't hit the Moria, then it wasn't really worth it anyway. So I'm not a huge fan of Isho at this point. I'd rather play the Kaido, which again also is really good against Shanks. So I really think in most situations, if you want to be attacking against Black Yellow or Shanks, then this guy is the card you will want to go to. Well, we'll get to him a little bit later. Then the next one is Kaku. 5-cost Kaku is very nice actually as a attack option, because it is a CP card, which means that Spendam can actually pick it up, so you can dig for it in the earlier turns if you really want to be dropping it on a 5 down turn. This card mostly excels against Dovi, because it basically gets rid of a 4 cost, right? Because you're gonna be swinging with leader, give something -1, then it becomes a 3 cost, and then Kaku can come down and KO the 4 cost. And it's also good because it's a 5 cost, which means that the Law will not be able to bounce it off the field, so you can keep applying pressure with this card after it's played. So yeah, if you are expecting to run into a lot of Dofi, I definitely think this is one of the best deck cards. And it's also not bad against Purple Luffy, actually, because you can, like, on the turn they play Zoro Jiro, you can play this and then get rid of it, which is kind of nice. I definitely think Kaku is one of the more popular and also one of the better tech options in the current format, just because Dofi is so popular. The next on, we have Mancherry. Don't want to linger on this too long. This used to be popular because you can rest it and then return 2 cards to the bottom of the deck, and you can pick up like a 3 to 5 cost from your trash. So usually this will be Rebecca. It's good at picking Rebecca up, and then Rebecca can also protect it, right? And then you can just do it again next turn, which is quite nice. I think this card is generally strong. There's not like a specific matchup where this card is like very, very powerful. It just used to be an option that people ran, but I really think in this form you have to tech more against specific decks, and Mancherry just sadly does not have the time to shine. It's just a little bit too slow. Then the next one we have Brooke. Again, this card has fallen kind of out of favor. It used to be good against Black Yellow Luffy, because you can swing, give something -1, and then you can trash their forecast with the unplayability. Which is kind of nice, but oftentimes you would find that actually it wasn't that high impact. But it was very good against Nami, because you get to play it and then they have to put 3 cards back to the bottom of their deck, which is very nice. But yeah, Nami has pretty much fallen out of the format entirely because Doffy being so popular, and then there's just better options against Black Yellow Luffy, pretty much, than this Brooke. And also, it has no counter value, and I really think that any tech card that has no counter value immediately is a little bit less good than ones that have counter value. Yeah. Then I already mentioned a little bit the 2Ks. In the core list there were 7, and I basically think you want to be running 10. And I think you will want to use the remaining 3 spots for some combination of Kaku, Who's Who, and or potentially another Tsuru. Personally, I really like Kaku because you can get value out of it. If you already have Jack on field, you get to play Gecko Moria, then go into Helmeppo, Rebecca. Helmeppo give -3, then Rebecca gets Spendine, play out this Kaku, give -3, swing with Leader, give -1, and this means you will have reduced a 10 cost to a 3 cost, and then now Jack can out something like Ace, for example, or 10 cost Shanks, stuff like that. I really like this specific card. I really think running one of this is pretty much always correct, but just running more 2 or Who's Who, they all have their own little benefits. True if you want to see it more consistently in Trash, Who's Who if you want to play it out more often on the 5 down turn against Doffy. Yeah, then we have Stussy here. Honestly, probably not worth playing in this format. It only excels against the Mirror Match and Enel. And the thing with Enel is, I think, basically if you're playing out this deck correctly, you should always be beating Enel. So this is not really necessary for that. And then in the Mirror Match, it's good to outjack, but there's like other ways to outjack. And the Mirror is just not as popular anymore as it used to be. So I really think that, yeah, if you're expecting to see a lot of Mirror and Enel, maybe play this card, but generally I wouldn't really recommend it. Now, one of my favorites out there is Nightmare Luffy. This card is crazy in my opinion against the black-yellow deck. It's probably the best deck card you can run if you are expecting to face a lot of black-yellow and are afraid of the matchup, which you should be, because it trashes a 2 cost when attacking, and this can also boost up itself with the plus 1000 power effect. So late game, you can basically like play a reduction card, swing with this, trash their Saba, and just hope to connect with this and go for a game like that. And then also it's kind of nice against Blackbeard because it can out their Jesus Burgess without an unplayability, which is very, very nice. The only thing that's a little bit unfortunate is that Blackbeard's always on 5 Finger Pistol, and Finger Pistol is going to be able to KO this, so usually we'll not be getting this off. It does shine a little bit in Black Yellow Luffy right now though, because most of them don't play Finger Pistol or the 5 cost Sabo anymore, like the yellow one. So this will usually stick on the field. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this if you're expecting to run into a lot of Black Yellow, and even against Teach, again, it's definitely worth having this in your deck, because if they can't out it, this is very powerful against a lot of their cards. Yeah, huge fan of this card, and even against other decks, sometimes if you have a little bit of a slow start, this can really yeah, get in there later to get rid of their big drops. Then with this guy, Sabo, this card is very good against Doffy, specifically because it KOs a 5 and a 3 or less, and again with your leader swing you will be able to reduce one of their 4 costs to a 3 cost. You can play out this and pop 2 of their bodies, which is yeah, just very strong. Honestly, I think probably the only matchup this card really shines in is Black Yellow Luffy, and then against Purple Luffy it's also okay, but I don't really think this is like the tech card you want to be playing if you think your Doffy matchup is not as good as it should be. And Doffy already is like one of your better matchups, right? Like it's not super good, but it's like 55-45 in favor of Luchi, I think. But yeah, if your locals is like full of Dofi, then this is definitely a good option. And Kaido, I already mentioned it a little bit. I love this card right now. It's very good against all the decks that go super tall, like Yellow, like Shanks. Even in the mirror, it's good. And then again, it really shines against Black Yellow Luffy. It gets rid of like their Moria usually, because you are gonna be reducing their Moria from 8 to 7. Then play out this, get rid of the Moria, and they also have to discard a card, so it really eats away at their hand as well. And in combination with any reduction in your deck, basically, you will be able to get rid of a 10 cost when playing out this card. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. I would definitely recommend playing 1 or 2 of this in your deck if the format doesn't drastically change. Yeah, very good card. Definitely like it more than Isho. It's less random. It gets rid of a threat of on the field, which is what you want to be doing with Luchi. So yeah, Who's Who already talked about this. It's basically like a pseudo Kaku, but this is 2k counter, but it does cost a card in your hand. I really think it's good against Dofi though. And I think it has the right to be in your deck list if you're playing this this deck right now. Honestly, I would say generally speaking, this card is better than Kaku. I just really like having Kaku because it also has like a huge use when it's in the trash, and that's where it will usually be when you're playing Luchi. Then the next one we have here is Hina. This card is getting a lot more popular, basically just to get back with Rebecca and give them -4. Very good synergy with Jack and Nightmare Luffy again. You know, if you establish one of those cards and then the turn after you play Moria into Rebecca and Helmeppo. With this, you can get rid of pretty much everything. If you have Luffy or Jack on field. Because you can give like a -8, which is very, very strong. So you can even get rid of Jack with this play, which is very nice. Just easy access from the trash with your Rebecca. Sometimes if you already established Brook, playing out this is very strong as well, because then you can give something -4, swing with the Brook. Yeah, this card is good. The only thing I don't like about it is that it does, again, not have any counter power, which I already mentioned. Just makes me a little bit less enthusiastic about deck cards in general. Then we have this card, Tashigi. It's kind of good against Black Yellow and Teach. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest, but it just has the thing where it trashes an opponent's card instead of KOing it, and it's during the active main, so it's really... if you expect to see a lot of Teach, then I can imagine you want to play this card, because it has the active main and the trash, which makes it good against Burgess, but also against Black Yellow Luffy with the Sabo Ride. But you always do need to have a reduction alongside this, because the unplay is only if your leader is Smoker, so you cannot give something -4 when you play this. But yeah, this is good against Teach, I suppose. Then Finger Pistol, this card's also not very popular anymore. What I do like about it is the trigger effect, like sometimes randomly you can just win because it's in your life. And basically it can be in your deck again against decks that go tall, because it KOs a 5 cost, so you need like less reduction to get rid of something like an 8 cost or a 9 or 10 cost. Again, good against stuff like NL, Shanks, and if you get lucky, it's also good against Dofi from life, right? But yeah, not a huge fan of this. And then, oh right, but it is a CP card, so you can pick it up with Spendam, which is nice. And the same goes for the last 2 cards I have here. This one is Soap Sheep. Give up to one of your opponent's two of your opponent's characters free. Very important, 2 of your opponent's characters -2 to their cost this turn. And this just really combos very well with your 4-cost Rob Lucci against Dofi. This card shines against Dofi because on 5 done, you can go swing with leader, give something -1, then play this, give that same character -2, and another character -2, so they want to have a 2 and a 1 cost, and yep, that's exactly what Luchi gets rid of. So yeah, this card is very good against Dofi. And then also against Pluffy, it's nice, because this alongside another reduction, and Luchi will get rid of their Luffy, Taro, and Zoro potentially, which is nice. And then depending on if it's Ice Age or Tempest Kick, even Sankoro sometimes. Against other matchups, it's not that good, to be honest, but it's always at least playable, right? Because just giving stuff minus, that's something that you want to be doing in Luchi. So also one of the better tech cards in this format, I think. And again, CP, you can pick it up with Spandam. Very nice. And then the last tech card here we have is the 6 King Pistol, which is just the 0-cost black event. In Luchi, you are playing like a decent amount of non-counter cards, and if you really feel like I'm playing a lot of them, have a lot of times where your hand is like kind of bricking, then I would recommend playing this card, because it just turns one of your bricks into a counter essentially. And again, it has the CP name, so you can pick it up with Spendam, which is nice. This doesn't really shine like in a specific matchup. I guess against like the more aggro-ish decks like Pluffy and Dofi, this is kind of good, but it's just kind of good in pretty much all the matchups. It just doesn't specifically counter anything. But yeah, definitely potentially worth playing this. Hey guys, Josh from the future here, because apparently I totally forgot to include this card in my list for some reason, even though it's actually one of the most relevant cards in the current OP09 format, which is the STO8 Uta. So basically, this card is Annie's Lobby. Like, we used to have it before it got banned. Like, each turn you can rest it, activate main, give something -2. And this character cannot be KO'd by battling a leader. So basically, if you manage to clear your opponent's board every turn, they will never be able to out this, unless they're playing like blue or black, right? Or I guess red as well, but they won't ever be able to out this with battle. And then you can use it like multiple times, and even if they can out it with battle on the next turn, this basically functions as like a pseudo blocker, because they have to get rid of this, right? Which I think is pretty strong. Like, it doesn't have any counter, which is why I'm not a huge fan of it, but again, like the fact that you can play this on your 2-down turn to have like a good play early on, if you don't want to be setting up with Spendam, and then they have to attack this, so it's also like a blocker on the next turn. It's very, very powerful, and it synergizes really well with your Rob Lucci, right? So yeah, I wanted to add this card, because it has been quite popular in the East, and I've also seen some topping lists in the West with this card as well, so it's definitely a good option. So yeah, that's in my opinion a pretty extensive overview of all the tech cards you can be playing in OP09 Rob Lucci. I do hope you guys enjoyed this, and it was in-depth enough. If I forgot about any cards, be sure to let me know in the subscription. Please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't yet, because I do plan to do this kind of format for more decks. And yeah, if you do, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!